Hey everybody, it's Tim Van Orden, and today I want to talk about the challenges of living in a time like now, 2020, with all kinds of uncertainty and an election that's got a lot of people concerned, viruses that have people concerned, an economy that has people concerned, and numerous other problems related to those issues. So, I want to look at this through the lens of something I hear people say: expect the best, but prepare for the worst. So when I hear people talk like that, or when I see people thinking like that, I think of the tails on a bell curve. So you've got the majority of the data in the middle, and then you've got the tails, or the extremes, at the end. So essentially what we do, I think innately, it's part of our human nature, is to look at the extreme cases, either the extreme positive, the best, let's expect the best, and then the extreme worst, and let's prepare for that. But the majority of life's experience is happening there in the middle. But thanks to the media and thanks to our own negativity bias, we tend to look just at the extremes. So as a coach, when I work with people, something I've really had to come to terms with is that I can't change people and I can't fix people, and I shouldn't even try. My goal is to support people. So how this relates to the large mass of data there in the middle is that for the most part, life is not going to be the best and life is not going to be the worst. It's going to be in the middle. You can have a few events in your life that are incredible, and you're going to have a few events in your life that are terrible. But the majority of what you experience, the majority of days and moments that you have, are going to be normal, mundane, average, boring, nothing to write home about. So, this is where people get into trouble, because they frame things from those two tails, the best and the worst, and they reference everything through those lenses. How does this moment relate to the best? How does this moment relate to the worst? This is something I hear with my family all the time. They prepare big family dinners, and almost inevitably there is a comment that somehow this particular dish is not perfect. It could be better. They could have added more of this, they could have had less of that, and maybe next time. So they're disappointed in eating a meal that's actually pretty good. It's better than just average, but it's not perfect. It's not the best meal. It's not their best effort, and therefore they can't really enjoy it. So when we get stuck in these two poles of experience, or lensing, these two lenses, it's very difficult to enjoy the majority of life's experience, because it's not going to be the best and it's not going to be the worst. So I think we really set ourselves up to have challenging experiences when we see the world through those two lenses. And social media is not helping, because we've got two things that generally happen there. People show you their best face, their best day, their best experience, their best vacation, or they talk about the worst. Everything's going to hell. Can you believe this person did this? And that's what we get. If people just put up their average day, nobody's interested. Hey, I had oatmeal for breakfast. Yeah, and? Well, that's important, because what you do for the majority of your life is what's going to shape who you are. It's the habits, it's the processes, it's the conversations that you have on the days where there's nothing of note that shapes who you become. So it's important to know who you are in the midst of those things. It's important to know what you're doing on the days that don't seem like they matter, because there's nothing good or bad. It's just another day. Same old, which essentially means that it's not interesting. It's old. I've been there. I've done that. So we get jaded, and we no longer find life interesting or worthy of our attention if it's not the best or the worst. The Buddhists have an answer for this, which they refer to as beginner's mind, where each moment, regardless of how mundane it might be, is viewed through the eyes of someone that's never seen it before. Because in actuality, you haven't seen it before. You just think you have. Even though this room isn't changing at a scale that I can easily recognize, it is changing. And even though the world outside doesn't seem to be changing at a scale that I can recognize, it is. Things are always changing, as am I. Not just physically, but also in how my brain learns to process the world, in the model of the world I create. So there's always change going on if you're willing to take a look. So back to this idea of fixing or changing people and how I've had to let that go. Because as a coach, what I wanted for people early on was to help them create their best life, their best experience, and to help them avoid their worst experiences. We're going to transition you from this worst place, not somewhere in the middle, but to the best place. Because why would you hire me to transition you into that middle ground, into the place where you're going to be living your life on most days? But if you don't know how to live on those average days, you're going to be ineffectual for the vast majority of your life. If you're only preparing for the worst and expecting the best, you'll have no idea what to do with average moments that seem completely inadequate compared to those two tails. So we seek more on the best side, or we obsess more on the worst side, because living in the middle just seems so boring, so inferior to those tails, that we quickly run away from it. So from my perspective, especially in a time like we're experiencing now, of such great uncertainty, it is so important to be here in the average moments, and not to be expecting the best, and not to be preparing for the worst, but preparing for this moment, preparing for the average. What can I do to make this average moment, this average day, this average experience, this average activity feel more empowering, more alive, more novel, more interesting? Because when we get interested in the average moments, we find ways to make them a little better. We find ways to make them a little easier. We find ways to make them a little more enjoyable. And this relates to an experience that we have all seen lately and probably even participated in, where a bunch of us get together and everybody has their phone out. So we're together, but that's not enough anymore. That's just an average moment of interaction. It's got to be better. It's got to be more interesting. It's got to be more engaging. So my phone is out. Yeah, I'm hanging out with you, but I'm really not, because you're not interesting enough. And the fact that you have your phone out tells me that I'm not interesting enough. And therefore this moment, this engagement isn't interesting enough. Humans are not interesting enough unless they're doing something that's the best, or they're doing something that's the worst, and then we tune in. So let's find a way to celebrate the average, to celebrate the vast majority of the moments that we are going to live on this planet while we have them. Because if you do that, if you can fall into the average, if you can fall into the mundane, the everyday, mundane means of the world, by the way, not a fantasy, but of the world. If you can fall into the world as it is right now, without needing it to be better, you'll find ease, you'll find fulfillment, you'll find empowerment, and you'll find a way out of this need for everything to be better than it is, because you're preparing for the worst. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. How do we move away from polarized thinking? How do we get ourselves to celebrate average moments, the bulk of our life? And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Share it if you think this is a conversation worth sharing. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and come on over to Patreon. For $1 or $2 a month, you help me create more content and keep conversations like this going. Okay, thank you. See you soon.